I want to share a secret to having courageous conversations. Now, I know, having said those two words, you're already trying to figure out what I mean by courageous conversation, and you're going to check it against your own definition of what is it to have a courageous conversation. Perfectly normal. Good thing to do. But notice you're already standing in the land of assumptions and bias. So let me give you 3 points that define what a courageous conversation is. The first is that all parties have an opportunity to express their views openly and truthfully. Simple words. Much more difficult and challenging to accomplish on a consistent basis because we human beings, we're a threat identification machine. Anything that feels like it's going to compromise our ability to belong and to be accepted, that causes us to censor, not be quite as open. Maybe we lie by omission, which means we're not being as truthful as we could be, all in the name of protecting ourselves. So, that first part, expressing our views openly and truthfully, they're going to need a little assistance. The second part of the definition is this. You want to create an engagement exchange. In other words, not a monologue, not positioning, but truly something where the conversation moves back and forth amongst everybody with an expressed purpose to create a new and shared understanding. How do we do that? How do we create a new and shared understanding? Well, it's not obvious in the words, so I'm going to make it obvious. One must be willing to loosen our grip on our own habits and preferences. Again, these are going to inform bias, and it's about being available to hear something that is inconsistent or incongruent in some way, maybe even a little bit in conflict with what we've always known and accepted as true. And third, we want to generate an immersive experience that compels relationship. These might be as simple as a comfortable living room to sit in. These days, of course, it's on Zoom. So, how are we creating a comfortable space on Zoom? There are lots of ways in which we produce an environment that is more open and more inviting for people to approach something that feels a bit uncomfortable. Now, if we think about the word courage, it comes from the Latin root cor. Courage is the original Latin term, which means that the heart is the center of all of our feelings. I think that's quite helpful to us when we think about what's the secret to courageous conversation. Ask yourself, what do you love so much that you have a layer of fear protecting it? Because that, of course, is how it operates. And if you're finding yourself feeling angry, remember that anger is the shield to fear, which is protecting what we most love. So when we remember, and this is what compassion is all about, to be with the passion of another who might be angry or operating in a fearful way, remember that underneath all of that sits something that is absolutely loved at the center of who that person is. This is what we want to be curious about, to be in wonder about. So the secret of courageous conversations is not getting hooked. Now, that sounds easier said than done too, doesn't it? So what are we getting hooked by? We're getting hooked by something that's unfamiliar and creates a bit of discomfort. If you want to have a courageous conversation, it is important to build your ability to have some comfort with being uncomfortable. Now, that's going to be outside of that courageous conversation you're having. And this is in your practices. What do you actually believe for yourself about your ability to be with something that's uncomfortable? When's the last time you learned anything without having some missteps, stubbing your toe, When I was learning how to skate as a little girl, I did a lot of falling down before I was graceful, jumping and spinning. All of us fall down and get up. There's an old Taoist proverb, fall down 7, get up 8, which is honoring that this isn't about being perfect. Courageous conversation is not a performance. It's a genuine, open, and truthful. In other words, be vulnerable and revealing about who you are and what you care about and what lives in your heart. Available to have something you've believed for a really long time to be challenged in the name of creating relationship, authentic relationship. Some of you might remember that you have some neurobiology called the reticular activating system, and its job is to help us process the millions of bits a second that always come at us, that we're taking in, mostly about 12 or 14 of them, not all of the others. And our brain filters. It sets up, you can think of it sort of like doorways. It says familiar, not familiar, wanted, not wanted. So if you want to get comfortable with discomfort, you must tell yourself that you're available for something to challenge your point of view, challenge your beliefs, and that you'll allow a certain amount of time to explore it. This then turns that reticular activating system into your resource, the one that can say, let me see what else is here. Let me use my curiosity to find out, what is the other person experiencing here? Now that's what contributes to creating an emergent exchange. What must you believe about yourself? This all comes back to the generative mindset, and this is the secret to courageous conversation. You are whole. You have all the resource and capability and innate creativity necessary to meet the moment, to meet any moment, no matter how frightening it might be, how challenging it might be to your worldview. You have everything necessary to be with it for a short period of time in the spirit of learning about yourself, learning about the other, and finding where your common points are. When you enter with the purpose of a new and shared understanding, and you also see the other as whole, resourceful, capable, and creative, now we have an opportunity for the immersive experience. A little tip for success: don't try to do hours or a day's worth of this at a time. Set the space up. Make it be comfortable. You might use music. You might use imagery. You might start with sharing something about each other. Tell me something about you that I don't know. Tell me something about you that expresses what you hold near and dear to your heart. Allow there to be room for that relationship to blossom before you dive into something that might feel a little uncomfortable, maybe even a little contentious. All of the things that are left to be done are big challenges. The easy ones have been accomplished. And if we're to survive on the planet and to restore a sense of humanity amongst the populace around the world, all of us must learn to step into courageous conversation.